I'm Dr. G, and for the past 10 years of my life, I've been passionate about all things holistic healing. I've been committed to healing myself and others from the inside out by incorporating some of the most effective modalities for healing the mental, the emotional, and the physical. I've learned that they give us the opportunity to be our most authentic and powerful selves. Heal Thyself is a show dedicated to just that. Today's show is going to be incredible, and I say it every week, of course I do, because it is incredible. Knowledge bombs of digestible information to empower and create clarity on what the highest version of us looks like. Product reviews to provide informed consent so you can buy the safest and best products out there. Better than the first two that I spoke about, and you're getting other B vitamins, which are energizing, right? Get off of it, throw it away. And special guest segments with some of the brightest and most elite minds in their field.
So what is that like on my nervous system? 6 hours of holding that emotion.
Here's the earth. Here's the mechanisms and mechanics of an earth when it breathes. We would think much different about that asthma patient that shows up.
All to create change in all the parts that make you, you, so we can start healing ourselves and each other. Hey, all right, everyone. Welcome to Heal Thyself, another episode. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. As always, what a good show we have coming up today. So a lot of people DM me, a lot of people ask me, hey, doc, what do I do when I'm feeling off? So today I put the top 5 things to do when your body's feeling off, when your mind is feeling off, when you're just not right. Here are the things that I want you to try out. So we'll get to that in the knowledge bomb. And we have an awesome OG of naturopathic and integrative medicine. Dr. Paul Anderson, better known as Dr. A, is joining the show, and we're going to talk about COVID. Now, I haven't really talked about COVID since before COVID, mostly because it's massively political and there's so many differing views. And then on the other side is because platforms do not take well if you have any opposing view. Dr. A is so well researched and so well respected integratively from all sides of medicine that I'm so happy and confident to have him on, that we can really learn more about, well, what is COVID and why so many people got sick? And what are some of the underlying things that we're not talking about as to why seemingly healthy people have gotten sick from this infection in the past almost 2 years now. Also, he's going to speak about what are some of the best supplements out there that we see in research that have been shown to be protective. So he's going to give us a new perspective on COVID, maybe stuff we haven't heard about or stuff that is slowly coming out in the research. But yeah, it's going to be amazing stuff. So let's get to the knowledge bomb. But before we do, words from our sponsors. All right, Bioflavonoids has a Black Friday deal that's going on. And not only are you going to get a huge discount all month on their supplements, but they're also going to give away $200 worth in free gifts. So Bioflavonoids has been advertising a lot on my show for quite a while now, and this is a really good deal. Actually, the biggest one that they've offered since being on Heal Thyself. If you'll recall, I spoke ad nauseum about magnesium breakthrough, but there's a reason, because it is the best of the best. It's an organic, full spectrum magnesium. It's a supplement that includes all 7 unique forms of magnesium for stress relief, better sleep, and it's all in one bottle. It's the one that I take every single day. I just came back from Joshua Tree, and I did a little video of my nighttime routine. And one of the first supplements that I'm taking right there next to my bed is the magnesium breakthrough. I take 2 before bed, and it helps elicit some of the best sleep that I can get. So most magnesium supplements fail because they are synthetic, they have crappy ingredients, and they're not full spectrum. My favorite part about this is that you're getting all 7 critical forms of magnesium. Pretty much every function in the body, including brain, sleep, pain, inflammation, less stress, is being benefited by a supplement like this. So all month, you're going to get 10% off using my unique code, plus $200 in free gifts with select purchases. Bioflavonoids, as we know, is one of the best supplements in class. And if for any reason you feel different, you'll get a full refund up to 1 year after purchase. So I want you all to go to www.magbreakthrough.com/DRG and use the code DRG10 to get your discount and free gifts today. Again, go to the link right now for your exclusive deal. That's magbreakthrough.com/DRG, and the code is DRG10. And this promotion will be until November 30th. All right, I want to talk about a partner I love working with. Birch is a premium mattress in a box company and makes mattresses and sleep products that are stylish, comfortable, and environmentally conscious. So their organic, non-toxic mattresses are made right here in America. They recently introduced the Birch Luxe Natural Mattress, and it's an upgrade from the original and well-loved Birch Natural Mattress. So the Birch Luxe takes comfort, luxury, and safety to the next level. It's crafted with responsibly sourced and sustainably produced materials, organic cashmere, organic New Zealand wool, fair trade cotton, and pulse latex. With 8 different layers, the Luxe was specially created with breathability and support in mind. Now, the natural materials allow for increased airflow that keeps you cool and comfortable throughout the night. And the natural non-toxic latex relieves pressure points, while the targeted zone lumbar support provides enhanced contouring. So the mattress has over 1,000 individually wrapped steel coils that cradle your body to limit motion transfer. Each Birch mattress comes with 2 of their Eco Rest pillows made from recycled plastic bottles. They're breathable and better for the environment. And the Birch Luxe mattress has several third-party certifications. The GOT certified organic label, that means it's certified by the Global Organic Textile Standard, the leading textile processing standard for organic fibers across the globe, and Green Guard Gold certified. That means it's free of any polyurethane-based foams and harsh, unnecessary chemicals and pollutants like the VOCs, volatile organic compounds, that I'm always talking about. I love Birch as a company, so what I'm looking forward most to about my Birch Luxe Natural Mattress is that it's natural, organic, and 100% non-toxic. It's breathable, keeps you cool at night, and supportive in relieving pressure points, all equating to better overall sleep. So with your Birch mattress, you're going to get a 100-night sleep trial along with a 25-year warranty. That makes you nervous to buy something you haven't tried. You get more than 3 months to make sure that you love it. And if you don't, they'll come and pick it up and give you a full refund. So the best part about it is that Birch delivers your mattress right to your door free within the United States. And it comes rolled up in a box and super easy to set up yourself. I love my Birch mattress and I think you will too. If you're looking for a new bed, check out Birch. You can click the link below or go to www.birchliving.com/healthyself and you're going to get $700 off of your first mattress and 2 free pillows. All right, Knowledge Bomb segment. How many of us feel off weekly, maybe a few times a month, maybe every day? We know when we're off too, right? We wake up, we're just like kind of sluggish, and maybe we slept well and maybe we didn't, but then we see and we slept for 8-9 hours, but we feel really off. Or we wake up feeling great and in the middle of the day, it just hits us and our body feels off, right? Our stomach doesn't feel as good as it does. Definitely those times when we feel mentally drained, right? Or we feel sort of depressive symptoms come on, anxiety come on, really discomfort or overwhelmed. All of those things I'm talking about under the umbrella of what it is to feel off, quote unquote off for lack of better terms. But what I wanted to do and what my goal to do in this Knowledge Bomb was to give you very simple interventions that are cheap, actually, that are free, outside of the time that you're taking to do it, that are free for you, right there for you when you're feeling off. So let's get started. I created a little acronym to give reverence to my friend, Dr. Sam. And she's been on the show once, maybe twice. And she's a good friend of mine. And we know her as Dr. Sam, but her real name is Saman, her full name. So the acronym is Saman. And she just had a birthday last month. So I'm going to start with the 5 things to do when you are feeling off. Number 1, solitude. And how perfect the timing is for this, because guess what? I just drove back from Joshua Tree straight to the studio, and I was there. And I was there for 3 days, and I was there without electronics. And the power of solitude, and you don't have to be dramatic like me and pack up your car and get an Airbnb and stay there in silence for 3 days. Or you can. But what I'm submitting to everyone here is that we take the time to be alone. And that's hard for a lot of us, especially those extroverted people like me, right? We just want to chat. We want to be included. We have fear of missing out on everything. So we want to go to every event. We want to go to every lunch, every dinner, hang out with all these people. And then when we're home, we want to get on the phone and go through Instagram and then call our mom or call our friend from out of town. And we're just going and going and going. And we forgot what it was to just be. We are in a state of constant doing. And when we come back to a state of being, it is facilitated mostly, almost always, by silence. This is why meditative gurus have said to get quiet, right? And be quiet and get deep into yourself. Well, the way to do that is to get in silence. And solitude is really, really important, right? Now, we are communal beings. We are tribal beings, right? This is how we thrive and survive. But that doesn't mean we couldn't and shouldn't take the time to be alone. So what I submit is take a day of the week. I mean, even take a half a day. Take some time, maybe 2 hours in the morning on a Saturday morning, maybe 3 hours on a Sunday morning. Go be alone, right? Find a place in your house where you can be alone, close the door, and dedicate that time for yourself. I actually have made a lot of use of noise canceling headphones, and I put them on and they cancel a lot of noise, and I'm able to get really quiet. So when I'm washing the dishes, the music's off, and I'm washing the dishes and I'm really intent on doing what I'm doing and I'm being very present. I'll do a whole show on the solitude, my experience in solitude. But really what I found is, generally speaking, solitude allows us to see the very things that we're running away from. Solitude allows us to integrate the very things we're running away from. And they could be scary. They could be really scary. But our body is always trying to get into balance. We know this because when we cut our leg or our hand, I got a Band-Aid on my hand right now. When we cut our hand, the body knows how to clot and heal. And we don't really think about that mechanism much. But the same goes with emotional traumas and the things that we're holding in. The body knows very well how to release them. We override it with our mind thinking we know better, or we don't want to show that expression of vulnerability or whatever it is. We don't want to experience it. But the body's always trying to do it. And the reason this is the first one in this acronym is because a lot of the time when we're feeling off, it's because things are resurfacing and we're pushing it down. And the energy it takes, the mental energy that it takes to subconsciously pull down and push down all the things you don't want to look at will drain you, right? So the reason why I say this is that if you're distracting yourself and you tend to feel off, there might be a bigger reason why. And solitude is where you might find it. Okay. Number 2, art. Art. What I mean by art is, what is your unique gift to the world? And how does your soul create through art, right? We are communal beings. I mentioned that. We thrive in community, right? But at our very nature, we are creative beings. Our very, very nature, whether we're in communities or not, we are creative beings. It's actually something I found when I was in solitude, is if I wasn't a doctor and I didn't have a podcast, who am I, right? Because or social media, it's very easy to identify with the things that we are interacting with all the time on the day. So I found that my soul would love to create. And my way would be through performance art, through plays, through song, through just writing. I find a lot of love being spilled out onto paper. And that's the way that I give my gifts to the world. But I ask you for yourself, what is your art? And do you even know what your art is? When you were a child, I'm sure you did. But are you honoring your art? How many of us create something, take the time, get quiet? Let's say we're painters. We love painting, but we haven't painted in so many years, but I feel really off, but I don't have time to paint because I feel off. The irony is that maybe, just maybe, you need to get out your canvas, put on some music or silence, whatever works, and make a painting. And how many of us make that painting and we go, oh man, I feel more off than I did before? It's inevitably, the answer is never. So what I'm trying to submit to you is that we all have unique gifts. Get back in touch with what your art is and do it. And if you don't think you have time for it, make time for it. You always have time. We have time to scroll Instagram. We have time to watch videos. We have time to watch Netflix. If we're doing those things and still feeling off, it may be that we need to do something more creatively expressive, like our art. Okay? Movement. Major. If you're feeling off, especially and your body's feeling stuck and the energy's feeling stuck and sticky and it's not moving and you're mentally feeling crappy, maybe even a little depressed, go outside. I don't care if it's freezing out. I don't care if it's dreary out. Get an umbrella. I don't care if the sun is out. Go on a walk. You need to move your lymphatic system. You need to move your blood. You need to get nutrients and oxygen to your organs, including your brain. You will feel better once you start moving. And that doesn't mean you don't have to do a super crazy CrossFit workout. You don't have to do a beach workout. You don't have to do a high intensity workout. If all you can afford in the middle of your workday at work is to go on a 20-minute walk, Do it and you will feel better. So do that movement. Okay. What's the fourth one? A. Now, this one might be a little bit difficult for some people because it requires you to get out of your comfort zone, right? It's uncomfortable to be silent, but it's accessible right now. It's uncomfortable to make time to do your art, but it's accessible. It might be for many people uncomfortable to start moving, but for many people, including me, who's grown up to keep to themselves, don't talk to strangers, affirmations, the fourth one, can be challenging. But affirmations, what I mean is this. There's something really powerful that happens when you give an affirmation to a stranger. Really powerful, actually. Almost therapeutic, almost curative in many ways. Because if you're feeling off, I challenge you. Do the other things, but I challenge you. Walk up to a stranger and give them a heartfelt compliment on something you love about them or you admire about them. It could be their energy, it could be their smile, it could be their outfit, it could be the way they walk with such confidence. Get uncomfortable. Do it with one person and see how you feel. Take a check-in, right, with your body. Audit. Get the feelings. Just go, okay, before I feel like this, now I'm going to do this, and now I feel like this. Inevitably, you will feel better in your body. Why? It's because you are expressing all of the positive energy. And by expressing the positive energy, guess what you're doing to your biology? All of the really feel-good hormones are being released, right? The dopamine, the serotonin, your cortisol is going down, your epinephrine's going down, neurotransmitters, the GABA. All those things you're feeling, and you're being flooded with all of the very things that were being suppressed and brought down and bogged down by their state. So, super quick way. Go out there and be a light, right? Be a light in your neighborhood. Be a light if you go to the mall. Be a light if you're at work. But be that light continuously and see how your internal state changes. And by changing your internal state, you're giving your signals to your organs to behave differently from the brain. And by your organs behaving differently, you're changing the state of your body. You're reducing that inflammation that is causing the very things that are putting you on a state where you're going, I feel really off today. All right. And the last one, and I would be remiss if I didn't say nature. Nature is healing. We know that. We actually have data that nature is healing. There are aromatics in the air when you breathe in the forest, but there's also negative ions. Put your feet on the ground. Catch the sunrise, catch the sunset. If you're chronically feeling mentally bogged down, physically crappy, and you're not doing the very basics, and your doctor is giving you, whether it be supplements or medication, and not talking about these, then they are missing the basic art of medicine. And the basic art of medicine is that you need to reconnect to nature and yourself. Always. Start there. Then do all of the other fancy things. But if you're not doing that, then you're missing the boat. Nature, nature, nature. All right. There's the 5 things you need to be doing if you're feeling off. I really hope they help. Put them into practice today. All right, everyone. Today's special guest, super special, awesome. We have a naturopathic and integrative doctor here. And Dr. A has been at it for quite a while. He's the OG. That's what I say from my side. But when it comes to cancer, chronic disease, infectious disease, he is my go-to. I've read all his books. I'm a big fan. And now we got the guy over here ready to drop some bombs on us. So Dr. A, Dr. Anderson, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, It's a pleasure. It's I know you're out in Portland.
Seattle, actually. Yeah, close.
Seattle,
yeah.
Seattle, close.
Yeah.
Beautiful for like 3-4 months, right?
And then it is
kind of
so good for those 3 or 4 months, and it's a little wet right now. So yeah. It's some of the most lush nature, and I'm always a proponent of telling people to go out in nature, and that's some of the best nature in America. It's beautiful up here. It is. Yeah.
It feels like, I'm in LA and the air is very different. It's all of a sudden crisp and your lungs are rejoicing every time you breathe in. Yeah, it's awesome stuff.
It was nice. Yeah. And I had meant to be down with you guys, but with everything going on, just wasn't able to travel as much as I usually do.
Yeah. And that's okay. I mean, this is the power of technology, but Doc,
that's right.
You're talking about everything going on. And I know that you are one of the most well-respected when it comes to infectious disease out there. I discovered you through the cancer route, but first of all, I'm going to ask you a very broad question and we can narrow it down. But why the heck are so many people getting sick and dying from this disease that's out there, COVID? I know from my side what I've been looking at since the beginning, and it was comorbidities that people are, especially standard Americans, are afflicted with. But I know you've done so much research, you've seen patients. What's going on from your perspective?
I bet the answer to that question could probably fill days of material, but it really is sort of the $1,000,000 question around what's going on with COVID-19 illness. And I think, we'll just start out with a bit of framing, which really helped me kind of put this into perspective. When we talk about people getting sick right now, one of the frustrating things for both healthcare providers and the patients is you'll see one person and, they kind of sail through the experience and yeah, they're sick and they maybe need some support and medication stuff, but it's not that big of a deal. You see another person and they wind up, in a few days and they're in the hospital, or in the ICU or something, and everything in between. It's so unlike most other illnesses that we've seen recently anyway, that's very confusing to people. How can, one viral entry into humans who should be similar cause such a variety of problems? And so one way, and I've been, as you mentioned, I started speaking nationally and internationally about the immunology of COVID and all this business in probably the beginning of April 2020. So we've been going a long time. And something that really helped as we went along was to look at COVID-19 as the illness, and we believe then that's triggered by the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So the virus and the illness really are two different tracks to ill health. And it's similar, although not the same, but it's similar to having an HIV infection versus having the disease we call AIDS. And so COVID-19 as a disease is the virus is the trigger, but then there's everything else that you either brought to the illness or that happened to you concurrent with that illness, that what we believe now is what creates this huge variety in the experience of having COVID-19 as a disease. And so then if you think of it that way, it's like, okay, we have the one constant, which is this virus that we call SARS-CoV-2, and then that sort of opens, in some people, Pandora's box to a lot of physiological and immunological shifts that go on in their body. And so then if we take, well, that's COVID-19, the disease, and then, as I said, you've got people all the way from barely any symptoms to medium symptoms to hospitalization, and some people die. It's mind-blowing, that it could be that wide. Well, when that happens, and we look at COVID-19 as this variety of diseases, there's a couple of categories of things that it appears from the research and just clinical experience that make you more likely to go one direction or another with your COVID-19 disease. So the first, and this is something in the early days when I was, just by way of background, in the very first thing I was asked to do was to get a hold of the Chinese hospitals that were dealing with most of the COVID patients. And this is before we had a lot here in the US. And so I got in and I went into their data system. So usually we worry about the Chinese getting into our systems. I actually backed into their data system for their hospitals and downloaded everything that they had collected. And then I had to have it translated from Mandarin because I don't read Mandarin. But I went through and I started looking at all of their data, and they were collecting data on everything. And one of the things, even way back then, that got my attention, because it's so much like some other diseases, is 100% of the people that got hospitalized had other infections that went on. So now there's many other things that they also looked at and we've looked at since then. But one of the critical things that I keep trying to bring up, especially when physicians ask me about troubleshooting, is we have to remember that humans generally carry a lot of potential infections that we may not experience. We may not feel them. A lot of them are asymptomatic, or we're exposed to things that our immune system's pretty good at, blocking. That doesn't mean we don't have stuff. So then the people get, something that's very immunologically stressful, like SARS-CoV-2 virus, and it basically takes that protection away. So you got this viral infection, and you got whatever these other co-infections are that are going on. So just from that point of view with the infections, if you get SARS-CoV-2 and then you have one, co-infection and a pretty spunky immune system, maybe not such a bad deal. Go to the other end of the spectrum, you get SARS-CoV-2, you've got 2 or 3 or maybe 4 co-infections that are silent and not a great immune system, might push you into a lot of the, either respiratory or cardiac or clotting or other problems that we see in COVID-19 disease. So there's this idea of the other infections, and then where your immune system is I think the big variable. So then that's affected by, everything. So your age affects it certainly, but your general level of health. Now we know, your level of vitamin D, which is a huge immunomodulator in the body, tends to be, your diet and blood sugar control seems to be very, very important here. And also how much your muscle is metabolizing, in all of medicine, but in cancer in modern times, we talk about muscle as medicine. And the more muscle mass you have as a human, the longer you live with cancer. And that's just a real basic, but it turns out it's the same in infectious diseases as well. So there's like, the entree point is this virus, and then there's other infections hanging out, plus your immune system. And then your immune system really then, as I say, that's probably the biggest variable as to how this all affects you as you go through it.
So it's so powerful to think, and even as you said in the beginning of this, HIV and AIDS, it seems that you're saying the virus is introduced, but it's really, how you said, what you are pre-existing with or what happens during the infection that really determines. So you name a few factors, definitely the blood sugar, the vitamin D that a lot of people have been talking about. But you mentioned infections. Were there any infections that you saw in the data, whether it be from the hospitals in China or in your own research, any co-infections that are really, really pushing this to become very severe?
Well, that's, and this is it's a lot like, oncology, where we would all like really clear linear answers. But this is not that way. What I will say is every study that has been done on COVID-19 patients where they actually looked for co-infections, 100% of them find them. So that's a big deal. Like, this is not just 20% of people get co-infections. It's like every time we look, darn, there's all these things going on. What I would say first is it's a huge variety of things humans are exposed to, and could come from fungal things, could be parasites, could be bacteria, could be other viruses. So if every time we look, though, 100% have co-infections, that's a big deal. Now, the next thing I'll say is, if you look at, because there's data from Asia, from parts of Europe, North America now, South America, the next thing is there's a lot of endemic chronic infections that may be more common in, the area of Italy than they are in, North America. So there's geographically common things. But the first thing is that it's not a small group of things. When I look at this group and I look at all the different research, it's all of the chronic things that a human could be exposed to and their body might have become a little bit friendly with. So we carry little bits of fungus in us, and sometimes a few parasites and other things. As I said, some of the infections that we see that are very common are common to a lot of our chronically ill people, such as atypical lung infections. So there's organisms, Mycoplasma pneumonia, and Mycoplasma actually has a whole bunch of other relatives that could be there. chlamydia pneumoniae, which is a lung infection. That's not the sexually transmitted one. It's a lung infection. There's some viral illnesses that are very common, relatives of Epstein-Barr and Epstein-Barr, for example. And then the other thing, which has been researched less, but I think is a big factor, at least in the chronically ill population, are people maybe who had recovered from the Lyme disease complex of illnesses. So it could be Borrelia, the Lyme organism, or others. Those seem to reactivate as well. And then, as I said, there's some fungus that we don't normally think about, but that are not uncommon, like aspergillus, et cetera, which certainly it's bad enough it's in your digestive tract, but aspergillus can be in the lungs too. So those tend to be the ones in North America that, let's say someone, they're not going to get hospitalized. They've been checked for, the big bad pneumonias. They didn't check them for anything else. Usually I'll recommend that they look for those organisms. So it's very similar to working up a sort of an unknown, what appear to be a chronic infection patient. Very, very similar bugs.
Incredible, because then you think about how many of us have up to a threshold infections as it is. You mentioned that some where our immune system has a control over and it's not overtaking us. But how many of us are right at the threshold and all we need is an infection with COVID to experience that set of COVID-like symptoms? And it's interesting to me because I know many people who've gotten it, and in my group of friends, we're all fairly healthy. We all did fine, but there's a lot of people in the Northeast, like my family in the inner city part of New York, who didn't do well with it. And I know people who've passed away with it. But then there's a lot of people who say, okay, here's the infection part. Does that put a lot of weight as to why we see people who don't have comorbidities like a pre-existing lung issue or obesity or cardiovascular disease? Is that why some people who are quote unquote or have a clean bill of health some are maybe getting sick and being hospitalized?
Yeah, and I think that's the frustrating thing for people to wrap their heads around is this person looked really healthy, and then they get the infection, kind of opens Pandora's box, and there's two things about that. One is, as you said, every human, but especially people maybe whose immune systems are more challenged, will be closer to the threshold for a lot of these chronic infectious things that we just carry with us that don't bother us really, but they need the door open. So one of the things that I've seen as a pattern is person is otherwise really healthy, they look pretty healthy, et cetera, and then the viral infection opens the door and there's a lot behind the door. So they just, they get hit really hard and maybe even hospitalized. When you deconstruct most of those cases, not all of them, the immune system, remember I said in the middle of the primary viral infection and all these other factors is your immune system and how spunky it is. A lot of times these folks have had sort of some low-grade chronic things going on, just chipping away at their immune function. So when they get the challenge and you open the door and there's a lot behind it, it's just too much. It's overwhelming. And I think that's where things such as, and again, there's no absolutes with anything, but especially with COVID-19, but I think that's where things such as underlying blood sugar management seems to be a huge thing, because it's better management is lower inflammation and a lot of downstream, things that don't stress your immune system. Worse management is very pro-inflammatory. Pro-inflammatory is a drain on the immune system and some of the hormonal things that support your immune system. So chronic long-term blood sugar management, which if you're healthy, not got COVID, you may not notice a lot from that if you're out of balance or whatever. The other thing is in some people, that I mentioned earlier, this balance between muscle metabolism and fat metabolism, which kind of goes along with blood sugar, but it's more about our body moving. And muscle metabolism sends signals out to the body that are very supportive to immune function and resistance. Fat metabolism is more associated with pro-inflammatory and immune stressors. So there's a lot of things in there that can go on. And I think that's why, and we haven't looked at everything, but I think that's why some of these global, generally good markers of body support and immune support, like vitamin D levels and other things like that, I think that's why they make such a difference. Because again, just like we can have infections under the threshold we don't notice, we may not have the greatest metabolism going on underneath, that leads to that. So yeah, I think it's lots of factors, but what your immune system's doing behind the scene and how much margin it has appears to be a huge factor in, do I get a little sick or do I get real sick?
Yeah, it's incredible because we're really just relating it to what is the atmosphere that it's living in? What is
Mm-hmm.
the field? What is the field of health, right? Is it a pro-inflammatory state? Is it an anti-inflammatory state? And how much has your immune system been taking a toll? So it can be such that we'll see someone who looks physically fit, but they may be dealing with something that's been smoldering for years and years and years. It's been my thought process, but I love that you talk about muscle and muscle metabolism, and the more muscle, the better. A friend of mine, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, is huge, and she talks about muscle metabolism and the importance of it as as muscle as a sort of like a hormonal organ, signaling our body to reduce inflammation and telling our immune system. So you got me excited. You got me ready to go to the gym after this and put on some more muscle. I am inspired already. I'm feeling good, Doc. Can I ask you? So we're in the, what is it? A year and a half, 2 years? Yeah, we're approaching 2 years with this.
Approaching 2 years, yeah.
Wow. Man. What is the state of it? Where are we going? I mean, I'd be remiss if I'm not speaking for all the followers going, how much longer of this do we have?
Yeah.
I know you don't know. No one knows, but you probably have a better idea than most.
Well, yeah, and I think obviously that's the other frustrating thing is you have a novel, infection and disease for humans, such that most of us have not seen in our lifetime, and it's worldwide. And a lot of things I talk about I'm in a few groups of physicians or scientists that we share information. So, it's not just the number of patients I've seen or the stuff I've looked at, but it's the thousands the other people have seen too. And so there's people in these groups who are really kind of tied into the epidemiology and the timing and all that. And most of them that seem to know, this is the trajectory of the numbers, they're really saying that, if we're not at the endemic level, it's close. And then that slide from endemic to, just a background infection such as influenza that comes back periodically, because by the way, COVID-19 is never leaving the human population. It's going to come back and it'll be here again. It'll probably be degraded. So it'll be a lower grade disease, but it'll always be here. But what they're basically saying is somewhere between, January and April, they feel that kind of drop off is finally going to hit. And part of that is this mass of, we've had a lot of people get the disease naturally and develop natural immunity. We've had a lot of people with grafted immunity from, immunization and some mixture in there. But what's really important is not those two categories, but the mass of immunity, that's carried, so that as the virus mutates and as it makes trips around, it's got less willing hosts, to be a problem for. So, and we all could be wrong, but mathematically and looking at cases and looking at, the weakening of the virus over time, that appears to be the direction it's going. So I think what's really important though is it's kind of from let's say we're looking further down the road in the future. It's really underscored this idea that yes, if I get sick today with something, I can't change all of my diet and my lifestyle and everything and expect that to affect me today very much, But what it should do, I think, for us humans is sort of open our minds to the idea that is a pretty big effect. And maybe, why don't I work on making myself a smaller target for the future, by is all these things we've talked about. And I think that's probably the most important part.
Yeah, and that's always what I say. The blessing within this is, at least for people, hopefully. I mean, it's not nowhere near what the media has been telling us, because it should be their job to tell us, hey, let's get out in the sun more, let's work out more, right?
Yeah.
Let's eat better.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about vitamin D more. Here's what we're really saying.
Yeah.
But now we know the importance, and a lot of people in this community are really going, all right, ever since my dad, ever since my uncle, my sister, I'm changing my diet. I'm changing the way because they want to, as we were talking about, the atmosphere, the inside of the body, the how everything is in an anti-inflammatory state. That's what a lot of people, I think, are taking accountability for, which is awesome, which is really cool. The standard Americans, I don't know, but maybe it's our job to really just keep educating as we do.
It's probably on the mind of the standard American a little more than it used to be, just health in
Yes.
general. And, even if there's confusion, I think people are thinking about it more. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that you were talking about the atypical infections in the lung. You mentioned a few in the lung, and early on when I was talking about COVID, I was talking about increasing antioxidants in the lung and strengthening your immune system, reducing inflammation in the lung. And there's a lot of people, and I just want to ask you this one supplement. A lot of people were asking me about glutathione early on. Are you standing behind glutathione as something that is protective in many ways? I got to be careful with my verbiage here too, but as something that is really an agent that we can use to strengthen our immunity, for example, we'll say.
Yeah, I would say, and of course, there's so many things, but I would say that from what we've seen with active infection, the support of glutathione in the body is probably one of the most critical things, especially early on. And the way I look at it is, so obviously there's more than the lung problems people get, but the lung is a good model just to talk about this. Remember we said there's the viral infection and then the COVID-19 complex of disease, and then your immune system stands in the middle. Well, when the viral infection enters, it's usually mucosal lung. And what happens and why COVID-19 illness is such a Pandora's box is SARS-CoV-2 opens a lot of immunologic channels that are not normally out of balance like they are with SARS-CoV-2. And the people that get, a rapid, overwhelming, lung problem, for example, well, not only does that make the lung organisms sort of wake up and say, hey, we're here too, but it also leads to respiratory problems, but also triggers clotting problems and all manner of other problems. Well, if you look at so part of that is part of our normal immune balance. Like when we get sick, we're supposed to have an upswing in inflammatory activity to fight back. What you don't want is the upswing to just kind of go crazy. And that's what happens with the SARS-CoV-2 virus. The upswing of immunity gets a little out of control. Well, if you think about it, so if the body has this natural way when we're infected to upswing inflammation, it also has a natural way to balance it out on the other side. And the balance tends to be, glutathione is probably one of the most important topics, but there's things that circle around glutathione to keep it there. But the glutathione biology, the complex around it, is probably the most important thing initially. And that's because it is what kind of says, okay, we got the inflammation. We're going to have a natural sort of upswing and then tapering off of immune activity to fight the virus and whatever. But we need to support the tissues so the normal tissues stay healthy and we don't have this inflammatory reaction spin out of control. Well, glutathione is one of the large things that keep that control and protect our tissues. It's easy to burn it up when you're sick. And so the thing that I've tried to counsel, doctors or patients on is, yes, glutathione or maybe precursors like NAC, which NAC actually has some great research that shows that N-acetylcysteine it helps glutathione formation and probably does some other things. It's got great research actually around the SARS-CoV-2 mechanisms and muting. Lipoic acid, ALA, also helps. So that's really important. But the other thing that happens is we burn out vitamin C really quickly when we get sick with anything. And we humans don't make our own vitamin C. It's water soluble. And if you look at anybody after they get sick, their vitamin C levels drop to almost undetectable. Well, you can't keep glutathione workable. I'll just say you can't keep it active without vitamin C. And so they kind of go down together, which is another reason why it appears that vitamin C really helps with folks too, like uh, quite a bit, even in critical cases. So I think glutathione is kind of in the middle of a process that is just naturally depleted when we get sick. And then we're talking just earlier about, well, we can feel healthy, um, but we're not, until we get sick, and we get sick and we got sicker than we thought. There's a lot of just life and toxic exposure and food and drink and other things that degrade our glutathione activity too. So if that's going on, but we feel pretty healthy, we don't notice it till we get sick. And yeah, I think glutathione's it's one of the big like target areas that you at least have to keep working.
Yeah, especially. So you would say early on, you mentioned, right?
Yeah,
Maybe pre-infection or early on.
yeah.
Is there any other well-researched, safe interventions that you yourself approve of, that you are a fan of? You mentioned some vitamin C, you mentioned ALA and acetylcysteine. Is there anything else that maybe we can keep on our radar?
There's a couple of things, maybe I'll describe them as, pre and post infection. And all of this, I think, maybe makes more difference early on because my personal experience has been the sooner you manipulate these things in the early infection, the less bad the disease will be.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, in addition to, say, vitamin C, which again, what we take in today pretty much leaves us today. So that's kind of a chronic thing. Glutathione support. A lot of focus, like a ton of focus, has been, for good reason, on zinc, because when we can get zinc into our cells, they're more viral resistant. Okay, but what I've done with most people throughout is, especially in the prevention side, rather than just taking a ton of zinc, a lot of trace elements get involved in this whole process. Zinc is sort of the sexy hot one, but like selenium and other things are very, very important. So what I've tended to have people do instead of just adding a ton of zinc is get a multi-mineral that's got, reasonable dose of zinc, and most of them do, and take that certainly in the preventive phase because it's going to give you the other trace minerals to support the zinc and its activity. The other thing that, we forget about is this whole glutathione vitamin C business uses a lot of trace elements as well, especially selenium and magnesium and zinc, et cetera. So zinc, yes, but zinc as part of a multi-mineral, a little easier to deal with too. So on the prevention side, you've got like vitamin D, vitamin A, in reason, your minerals, vitamin C and glutathione, all very important. If somebody is in a high exposure situation, which you could maybe argue everybody is right now, but certainly like people who have to, not everyone can work from home, for example, or not everyone has the opportunity to not travel or not maybe be around other people. Um, Certain things like bioflavonoids, so like quercetin has been talked about a lot. Well, in addition to being an immunomodulator like vitamin D is, it also helps your cells take the zinc and get it inside the cell where it works better and does some other goodies. So quercetin, at least certainly in high exposure, but as soon as someone gets infected, we usually add quercetin as a supplement. And it's very supportive in a number of ways, really. We think of it as a zinc ionophore where it shoves the zinc in the cells and helps resistance. But it really does a lot of other immune things as well that are very positive. And there's, of course, other things that can be done as well, but that's kind of the base support.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And it's so empowering to know that we can always just pick these up and put them in our pantry and take care of ourselves. I love that you said vitamin C is sort of in and out. So we have to
Yeah.
make sure we're eating vitamin C rich foods, and if we need to supplement, but we have to make sure we're always bringing it in, and know that it becomes very, very, very much so depleted when we're sick, as does glutathione. And so many people ask me about glutathione. I wanted to know what the expert said. So yeah, Doc, I mean, look, we went over a good amount when it comes to the state of COVID. Is there any other research, anything exciting that you found that maybe you haven't yet mentioned, or anything that maybe we should know as far as the state of this infection?
Yeah, I think a couple of we get macro for a second. A couple silver lining stories, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. The first one is we do get concerned with people that are, you check the box on risk factors, which is true. I mean, just statistically, if you're over 55 or 60, if you have some blood sugar issues, if you have, on and on, we all know the list. One thing I will say just on the silver lining side is that I've seen people who checked, one, two, or three of those boxes, and I've seen them get COVID, and actually weather it pretty well and not need to be hospitalized, because otherwise they were actually in quite good health, and they were actually not doing a lot of, pro-inflammatory lifestyle things like we've talked about, et cetera. On the other side of the silver lining thing, though, and there's many more, case anecdotes that I could share, but there were two people I saw who, if you pick the poster children for comorbidity where you should just die with COVID, I saw these two people, they're related, they both got COVID at the same time. Now, this is, you've got, both of them are cancer survivors, both have immunologic issues post-chemo, both are diabetic, very poorly controlled diabetic, both are quite overweight, and both have cardiopulmonary disease. So just like, this is the wrong person to get this virus. Now that, of course, made everybody more aggressive when they got the disease about treating everything. But, so that was good. One was hospitalized. The other one wasn't, but should have been. It was just one of those things, how it happens. In those two people, we were able to not only have them be supported, the one at the hospital, one at home, but we also got right on sort of an empirical treatment of the most common co-infections. So we didn't have time to test them on the front end. We just started aggressive treatment, kind of a broad spectrum with these atypical pneumonias and some fungus stuff and a little bit of other things that go in there. And they had a pretty horrible time with the disease, I think, because their underlying illness, but they both actually lived to the end. And I would have, I don't like to bet against people living and dying, but I mean, probability wise, neither one of them should have made it through. And I've seen that repeatedly where we can get, appropriate treatment into somebody, especially dealing with the opportunistic infections. So I think it's good for people to know that, your likelihood of getting the infection at some point in the next year is fairly high. It is weakening as it works its way through the population and mutates, which is great. It's more infectious, but it's weakening. But the more that you can do and the more proactive you can be if you do, develop the infection, the better your chance of living through. So I think it's important not to get too, too fatalistic that, well, gee, I'm not in great shape, so if I get it, I'm going to go down. And, I can say there's always time to start working on all this stuff we talked about, but the chance of you weathering an infection like this, if you do these things and are attentive to, the stuff we talked about, like co-infections and other stuff, is very, very high now. So I think that's a really, it's good to have silver linings.
Yes, and thank you for wrapping that up with that. Thank you so much, because it's really empowering for people out there who go, I haven't started any of this. I've just been a standard American on a standard American diet, but now is the opportunity to change, even if you are overweight, even if you have co-infections, even if you have comorbidities. now's your time, and super empowering. Doc, where can we find your information, and tell us about your books?
Yeah. So the best, I had my web team made what I call a hub website. It's DRANOW, Dr. A Now, DRANOW.com. And on there, for instance, I've written newsletters about various topics. So if you're interested in like a deeper dive into the nutrient COVID connection and what you can take, there's a newsletter tab. You can find that and other things. It has links to all the media that I do. I do a podcast and other YouTube and other stuff like that. And then it also has links to the books and everything. So DRANOW, dranow.com. And there's two primary books. You mentioned the 2018 one at the top of the hour, the Outside the Box Cancer Therapies. That one you can get anywhere you get books, but there's a link on my site. The new one is called Cancer: The Journey from Diagnosis to Empowerment. And the point of that book was after we got done, Dr. Stengler and I did Outside the Box Cancer Therapies, which obviously is aimed at integrative cancer therapies, as the name might imply. There was really a place I felt for the mind-body part of the cancer journey. And the biggest part of that is you get the rug pulled out from under you when you get diagnosed. And what I see with patients is and we all, bad news hits everyone bad, but it's what you do with that information and how you become an empowered patient. Empowered patients not only have better control over their health, but they live longer too. And so that book is all about that sort of inner, okay, I got punched in the face with this. How do I get to be, an empowered patient? So those are the latest books.
Thank you so much for writing that. That's what we need, the mind body part, so much, because that is a struggle. I've worked in the cancer hospital. I've seen it. People need that direction and they need that help and support. So for them to go home and read a book and feel good and stand up straight and understand, hey, look, the better my mindset, the better my body, the better the signals in my body, the better my outcomes, the better my health. And that's I'm so happy that you did the part 2 to it. Thank you, Doc, so much for being here and taking the time out of your day. I really appreciate it, and hope to have you back soon again.
Thank you so much.